I don't feel like in 2021 we should have families making $7.25, $8, $9 an hour to take care of their families. No one should have to work two full-time jobs to have a living wage. When so I think that that is something that we need to work on, and that is something that I vow to push for, just because I do think in order for us to get the best out of our community, out of our constituents, we have to start treating them like they're the best. Like firefighters, like some firefighters are making $10 an hour and they're risking their lives to take care of their community. Why are we paying them $10 an hour? And then we get upset when they go to Nashville or Atlanta or Memphis, where they're treated better in the grand scheme of things. So I definitely think that I would be a strong advocate for that, to be able to reach our potential within our city.
If you look at any YouTube or any city council meeting that we had when they were there, I was one of the main ones saying yes, they deserve a $15 to get that $15 raise. How we get there, that's the thing. Once again, even before our economy went to a downfall the way it is, those checks and balances, how do we create it so you'll have some sustainability to where you can rise everybody up and make sure it's doing, equitably, and make sure everyone is getting a piece? Because outside of the labor unions and those guys that are asking $15, like our fire department, they're going to need like 15 million to get them where they need to be. Our police department, they need a raise to, get them to a workable salary. And so right then, you're probably looking at another 100 million. And where does that money come from? You don't want to put the burden on our taxpayers. You don't want to cut any programs that are helping people, because when you do that, people lose jobs and people lose services. So that's why we have to definitely look at economic and community development, because once you start to develop communities, you can create a tax base that can help communities out and create other taxes where you don't put a strain on the community. So I think that's one of the things we're going to have to do, is prepare our communities and stuff for redevelopment and for revitalization without gentrification, so that we can get people taxes and money coming into the city, so that we can give all our workers the salaries that they all deserve, because they worked truly hard and they took a hard turn with COVID, although they kept working, but they were our essential workers and they didn't get the essential pay that they need. And some of them had to use their time for COVID, and they lost money and lost time. And I think that's a very heartful situation that we need to take care of as a city.
I support minimum wage increase, definitely. When I was working at UTC, I did join our union. It was new to the campus, the United Campus Union, and I'm very supportive of lower paid employees, because I worked as administrative assistant, so my position was in that category, you know, hourly rate and, needing pay raises. So I would definitely support them, the unions, and the increase, definitely.
First of all, I want to say I'm proud to have the endorsements of several working class labor unions, such as SEIU, who have endorsed me, Change Tennessee, the Chattanooga Area Labor Council, are all groups who have said Dennis Clark believes in working families. I employ working families. I come from a working family. And I really believe that we have to do what we can to make sure that the working families who work for the city, that they can afford to live in the city. And these are essential workers. These are our first responders, like our firefighters, who are only making $10.71 an hour. So I do support the increase, but I don't think we should just stop there. We should have had $15 per hour in 2005. It's 2021. We need to increase those salaries to be more competitive. And I think when you pay people what they're worth, you also get good work out of them. And so we're behind on that. I will not support a budget or vote for a budget that doesn't include that increase for those workers. And that's my pledge to those labor unions who have endorsed me. And we call them essential workers. But if we want them to stay in our city, be able to afford to live in our city, we have to treat them essential. And right now we're not. So I support that wholeheartedly, and higher. I don't think it should just be 15. I think it should be 18 or 20 bucks for what they contribute to our community.
I think that it's time, we're past time, Joy, then we need to increase the wages to $15. And yes, we did try and we were right there at it. And then what happened was the pandemic happened, struck us. So we had to revisit like what we could do, because we most definitely, wanted to make sure that our budget was a balanced budget and that we were taking care of everything else. So it's not something that has been shelved and just going to be forgotten about. It's a continued issue that we're going to continue to push until it's done. Because we know right now we have people that work for the city that's not making $15. They're barely making a little over minimum wage, but they're having to work 2-3 different jobs, even with our first responders. So we need to make sure that we're positioning them to where they no longer have to work 2-3 jobs, right? They can be at home, they can take care of their families, and they don't have to, be exhausted at the end of the day. And so we understand firsthand what that feels like. And especially me, being a single mom, having to raise kids, now I'm raising my granddaughter. So we most definitely want to make sure that individuals don't have to encounter all of those obstacles and they're in a position to take care of their families. And so we also, not just with Mayor Byrd, the work that he's doing, like we're working, I'm a part of the National League of Cities, and we also address these key issues with different policies to look at what we can change. It's been an issue with our state. Like if the state of Tennessee just say, hey, we're gonna mandate that this happen, this will be awesome, right? And so we wanna make sure that people understand that, like it's not just stopping at our city council. You can go the step above to make sure that you're advocating for the changes as well for the state to make it a policy change, a law change for all across Tennessee.
100% a $15 minimum wage. I am endorsed by the SEIU, the Service Employees Union, as well as the Chattanooga Area Labor Council. Being a daughter of a labor union stewardess, also just growing up, not having much, it is important that people make livable wages. And $15 isn't really livable, but you can still make it work. It's important to do that. People need to be able to make the money they need for upward mobility, to take care of their homes, to take care of their children, to get into their community and help and do things. But it's hard to do when you're working 2 and 3 jobs. You're working a job that's $10 an hour, maybe 40 hours a week. You're working another that's maybe $8 an hour, and you're doing another 20 hours. That's 60 hours a week, and you're still not really making it to the place where you can really impact your family, impact your community, because you're just struggling to get by. So I do 100% support that. I believe that if we move that dial up, we'll see the great benefits of it. There are no real downsides to paying people what they deserve to make. You will see so many different things change if we just take the time to do that. The real bottom line is it's a capitalist society. Some people on top, some people on bottom, but it's time to flip that and begin to really push that $15 minimum wage. I want more. I would love to see more, but at minimum, that's what we could do.
Not only do I support it for city employees, but once again, on the national level, we're looking at a minimum wage of $15 an hour. And I agree with that. There is no way to stay above poverty at the current level that we're paying people, be it city workers or not. So I would definitely support that for city workers. We need, and once again, as people make more money, they have more disposable income, and that money will get back into the economy and help the rest of the city.
In 2019, oh, sorry, were you finished?
Well, the only other thing I was going to comment is I don't think we can do this as a step function and go from the current wages straight up to $15 an hour. Once again, I think it's going to have to be a phased approach so that we can control our money flow. So I would see hopefully like a 3-year ramp up to get to that 15.
My understanding is exactly the same as that you have. Is that pre-COVID, the mayor intended to implement that. I've heard several of the mayoral candidates say they're going to implement it. I mean, the city needs to set an example for living wage jobs, and that, you know, we've talked about a lot of different issues, and we need to be sure, you know, I mean, I would be fully supportive of an administration budget, you know, $15 an hour. You know, I think that what we've got to do is we got to weigh the priorities with a lot of those issues. But I think that you know, it appears to me that the votes on council, the votes, you know, I mean, the mayor, most of the mayor candidates are talking about that. So, you know, yes.
My plan is this. I noticed as I was canvassing all over District 5, canvassing Holiday Hills, canvassing Indian Hills and Brainerd Manor, and a lot of the city workers say they're working 2 and 3 jobs just to make ends meet. I propose that we raise the minimum wage to $15 an hour. So those who are working the hardest for us, those who are working from sunset, sometimes the sundown and in between, they need to benefit by $15 an hour. That would definitely bring more to our economy, and it would be safer for them. Because a lot of them working 2 and 3 jobs just to make ends meet, and that's not healthy during this COVID time. Thank you.
So the city council has been doing work toward a $15 standard minimum wage for city employees for quite some time. And we're actually doing some work toward that at the school district as well. When we have city employees, as many as 40% of them who are making under the poverty level, we need to take a hard look at what our responsibility is as a corporate citizen. And so I do support the work that the city council has done to move toward a $15 minimum wage. I think it is appropriate because if the city of Chattanooga is paying workers such that they cannot afford to live in Chattanooga, all that does is hurt our city and our citizens. That puts more pressure on our nonprofit sector. It puts more pressure on our government assistance sector, and it's not appropriate. We need to be thoughtful about how we align our values and ensure that the people who work for the city of Chattanooga can afford to live in Chattanooga.
Absolutely, I support it. I do know that there's a proposal coming down from the government as far as a $15 minimum wage up to 2025 and breaking it into different increments. One of the things that I think the people need to understand is that a person cannot live on the wages that they're paying right now. Let's say, for example, let's say a person is making, a single parent is making $1,600 per month, which is an average of $400 a week. And they have to pay their rent, and the rent will wind up being about $900 on the average for a single parent if she's only got a couple of children. And then not only does she need to pay her rent, she have to pay her utilities. That's another couple of $100. She's going to have to buy groceries because she can't get food stamps because she's making too much money. So that's another couple of $100. And then she's got to have transportation to and from work. And 9 times out of 10, even if she's making $15 an hour, she's not going to be working more than maybe 4 hours a day, which is not going to give her enough hours to get benefits. So she's going to have to buy some insurance, some health insurance and life insurance. All of that is expensive. If she has a vehicle, she's going to have to insure the vehicle and put gas in the vehicle and possibly make repairs on the vehicle. And by the end of the month, she doesn't have enough money to even sneeze at. So that's where I stand on that. And that was my why.
I do support this wholeheartedly. This is actually one of my platforms. When we understand what the city of Chattanooga workers are doing to keep our city running, day to day, hour by hour, minute by minute, if anything, they deserve the amount of money that they're working for. You have to make sure you're taking care of your employees in order for them to do a good job. And our city workers have done a marvelous job in spite of. So I feel like now is the time for us to really give the city workers what they're needing. In order to raise a family, in order to make ends meet, in order to take care of everything that you need to, it's not going to cut it on $10.72 an hour. That's just, it's not going to get it. So because, you know, the city of Chattanooga employs them, and because if I were to be elected to the city council, I have a responsibility to fight for the rights of our city workers. So I do agree with that wholeheartedly.
I support making sure our employees are compensated with livable wages. And even if we have to do that in stages, let me tell you why it's so important. Let's take our firefighters, for example, and I'm working very hard on this with many of my council colleagues. They're way below where they should be. We have employees who are below where they should be. That should be a priority, not only for government, but that should be a priority for council. And I believe that it is. If you ask any one of us, I can only speak for myself, we hear you, we understand, we got to see some numbers, and that coupled with affordable housing is a very critical part of how we not only recruit, Sarah Grace, but we retain top quality candidates and employees for our city, which then in turn promotes the service that we receive as taxpayers. I mean, it's a very important circle that needs to be complete.
Just in general terms, let me say this. I feel like that if we could get businesses around the community to embrace the idea where they can afford it, of sharing a greater percentage of the income that they take in with their workers where they're able to, I think it's a fabulous thing. At our little company here, about a year and a half ago, we actually decided, because we were able to, that we would create a floor of pay for our folks that work for us of $20 an hour. Now, I say that, but at the same time, what I will say is creating high minimum wages, there is tremendous body of evidence that actually shows that it hurts many of the people that we're trying to help with those types of minimum wage increases. There are a lot of folks who are just trying to get started, get out into the job community, where if a business had to pay $15 an hour, they may choose to not actually hire that person because the return on that capital investment doesn't warrant that level of pay. And you've essentially taken the most vulnerable, and in some cases, the most vulnerable potential workers who are trying the hardest to get into the job market, to develop skills and to establish themselves, and remove their opportunity. So I don't think an across the board minimum wage for anybody is a smart idea, just as an overall point of view. But at the same time, I would encourage every business around town that's in a position to pay their workers more to do that, because I think it's equitable, it's smart for the businesses, and it's really, really good for the community. And so those are the sort of things. This is a classic case where a government doesn't necessarily need a program, but they can set an agenda, and they can, I think, create a dialogue around something that could be incredibly beneficial to the community.
So here's what I would say as it relates to city employees. Clearly, if you talk to city employees, there is a feeling that, man, they do a lot of work and wages are just not, you know, they're not being paid comparable to what that work would, you know, typically be worth, or what they would find in other cities or whatever. I think, you know, the city employees, whatever department they're in, they're the backbone of what, you know, what we rely on. And so I do think for that, city employees, I think that's something that definitely should be considered.
It is a $14 million commitment over 3 years. We can do that.
I want to see our city employees be paid equitable wages. 40%, I want people to think about this, 40% of city employees qualify for food stamps or some sort of governmental assistance. We should be ashamed that we have people who are keeping our city running who have to have sometimes 2 and 3 jobs. I was endorsed by the Labor Council and the SEIU 205 because I've been fighting with union brothers and sisters for years at City Council for an equitable wage. And that's not just only for city employees as a whole, but even when we had a study come out that our firefighters are making about $10.50 an hour to start, you're telling me the heroes and heroines that pull us out of burning buildings are making poverty wages? We've got to fix that. And we've got to fix that for several reasons. We want to treat our city employees with dignity and respect. We want them to be able to have one job to take care of their family members. But the other thing is we will continue to lose talent to other competitive cities if we do not bring our people up to an equitable wage. And so if we want to move into the future, we've got to pay our people. So I fully support a $15 an hour minimum wage for all city employees and a commitment to our firefighters that we need to bring their pay scale up as well.
I support the $15 rate minimum pay across the board. The reason why, if a person makes a quality living, then that person opens up the doors to get home ownerships. They can afford to pay to get a home. They can afford to pay to upscale their living conditions because they're making the income to be able to do that. So I think what you make directly ties into your living conditions for us, what you can afford to pay for, home ownership, and those type of things. But I think it evens the playing field of people being able to take care of their family. And I also think it cuts down on the illegal stuff. If I can make a decent living on a job, it cuts down on the opportunity of me want to go make decisions to do other things to try to offset what I cannot make on a job because it's not paying enough money. So I think in paying a good quality money, that it opens up the door for other things. But at the same time, I think we need to understand that if that was to happen and it goes up, it's going to be a lot required on the individual that's applying for these jobs or working these jobs, that the criteria is going to go up on them because we're paying you more money. And so we need to be prepared to not only receive the $15 an hour, but also understand that there's going to be more criteria, more things that's going to come along with that to make sure that they're getting the best for the bang for their buck or whatever.
Day one, we said our city employees are our number one asset. It doesn't matter what your priorities are. It doesn't matter what you want to do for a city. If you don't have the people to be able to carry those things out, then you can never reach your priorities and be successful. We shouldn't have city employees that are being required to take care of so many other people in our city that can't take care of their own families. So there is a lot of work that can be done and has been done, mind you. This isn't been neglected for a long time. There have been step increases, there have been pay increases, there have been pay plan changes and adjustments. We've done a lot of work already to get to a better place. Are we where we want to be? No, not yet, but we're getting there, and we've shown some of that work and some of that progress. I made a lot of waves early on, even with some of the bonuses yearly to give to city employees, because it was based on a percentage. And I would argue that the top level, be it the mayor's administration, the entire staff, were getting the same percentage as the lower paid workers. And so naturally, by percentage, it's a lot more money, but it doesn't mean that their job was any more important than the person that was, say, out there on the street. And so my argument was we needed to increase the amounts that were taking place at the lower end of the pay scale and not be as concerned about the ones at the upper, and I mean the high end of the pay scale, for what it is that they do. I'm not saying it's not important, but there is a definite shift. And the problem with that is compaction. We can raise $15 an hour. And let's say it was, I think I'd ran some of my own numbers at one point in time and worked with finance. I mean, it's $16-20 million. I mean, it's a big number, and that's reoccurring every single year. That's just one piece. That's getting up to say $15 an hour is a substantial amount of money. The problem is compaction at that point, where what about now when that $15 an hour for that person, now they're making more than their supervisor. Well, you can't do that. So now you raise the supervisor. Well, now the supervisor is making more than that. It's a stair-step effect all the way through the top. So while some people make it sound like all you got to do is just give $15 an hour, I understand that, but it's a larger picture that needs to be addressed. It's not just what would it take to get to $15 an hour. It was what would it take to balance out the pay plan all the way through, so that all of your different levels within that pay plan are matched up. Some positions have 2, 3, 4, 5 different levels within them that are different pay rate based on experience. All those would need to be adjusted if you're going to take the base to 15. So it's a monumental task, but it is one I think we can achieve with the right amount of planning and diligence and frankly, dedication to making it happen.
At a local level, I think that that's something that we could look into. I know that the $15 minimum wage covers a big spectrum of groups. And once we focus on each individual group, we could do things that would help each group instead of lumping them all together and only doing a one size fits all. So if we're looking at minimum wage for those teenagers, the minimum wage isn't going to help them. But if you're looking at those lower skilled workers that are potentially stuck in spots, more training might actually help them, whereas it wouldn't necessarily help those that are just trying to look for a foot in the door at the younger age. There are people that also want to work part-time. So there are different groups that we could help in different ways. And so I don't believe that we have a one size fits all.
One of the things that we have been doing is we've been partnering with other organizations. So having some conversations with Chattanooga Neighborhood Enterprise and having conversations with other professionals that's kind of on their own to have a lot of information. And we've been going to the drawing board. So some of the things that we've realized is that, forgive me, I can't remember that law off the top of my head right now, but there's a law that prevents this, like the city from allowing the houses to be revitalized, to be like they're blighted and they just sit there. And we are realizing that our homeless population are using that as somewhere to stay, somewhere to live. And one place back in Kentucky, they turned some of their blighted homes into like, what's the word I'm looking for? Quality housing. Like it's not something super fancy, but they turned that there for their homeless population and for their low income because they realized the need. And I think if I'm not mistaken, when I looked at our report, we have close to 8,200 blighted homes just throughout the city. And it's like, why aren't we utilizing that? Why aren't we revitalizing? So I think that is the first step. The first step is definitely revitalizing. And I think to go forward is to teach people, younger people, how to do home ownership so they can be striving towards having their own. Because I definitely think, not to, crap on landlords, but we do have landlords that have some of my constituents living in very bad conditions and don't fix it, but expect their payments to come on time every month. So I definitely think it's holding landlords accountable. It's going back to the drawing board and really figuring out what is the substantial problem and how are we going to use the funding that we're getting to fix this problem to actually start making fixes. Because right now, what I feel we've been doing is putting a Band-Aid over a broken bucket. The bucket's broken. We're just keep throwing these temporary fixes and it's just going to keep getting worse and worse. So I definitely think it's time for us to go back to the drawing board and really think about what are our priorities. If we see that housing is an issue, why aren't we taking these things to make change? Because we're having the funding. It's not that we don't have funding for it. We're just funding improperly.
One of the things in District 8, I have more affordable housing in District 8 that I'm gonna say probably in any other district in the city other than District 9. Me and Coonrod, we're probably running neck to neck. But man, Bayberry Apartments is going to be affordable for the next 30 years. Bayberry Apartments, Ridgeway Apartments, Chestnut Flats, and we got the new thing going on Main Street with the Facino Group and the Ames Center that's going to bring another 60 units. And all these places are going to be affordable for the next 20 to 30 years. And you have to think that's an amazing feat to have in just 4 years. We've created probably over 500 plus affordable housing units, but it's not enough. You still have people homeless. You still have people trying to figure out how they're going to find somewhere to stay. You still have people paying enormous rates to live somewhere. But the tools that we have is the tools when it comes to working with C&E to try to get a low interest loan for people to start creating home ownership. We need to probably start looking at ADUs, accessory dwelling units. So people that have these large yards, they can create affordable housing in their yard. But that doesn't mean they're gonna, rent to someone that's needing affordable housing. They can still rent to someone else. So we have to make sure that we are using all of our resources to bring people in to say, hey, you have to help. It takes a village. We have to do it together. And I understand so many people are making, hundreds of thousands of dollars because the market is so good right now. But just with the affordable housing units that we have in place, we have to figure out another way to say, hey, this is another tool we can use in our toolbox outside of the pilot and outside of the land donation, because our communities get a lot upset with that. But it's something that works tremendously right now. So I'm gonna definitely start looking at different tools to use and different ways to make it happen.
There's two styles of affordable that we found out. It's affordable, making a good living, and it's another style of affordable for the homeless or, homeless families. I look at it like the city and county. We have a lot of vacant properties, houses boarded up, foreclosed on. To me, I think we really should focus on rehabbing those homes, making them more affordable to the lower wage payer, families. And my heart breaks to know that we have a lot of families living in the hotels. They may have been evicted from just one incident, but still, it's sad to know families, children, bus stops, stopping at the hotels. And I think they should have the first option to working class homeless that can afford to move into a house or lease a house. I think we could really pay more attention to rehabbing the city and county properties instead of putting them on the bid list. Let's try to just rehab those homes and put them back on the tax rolls and let, people that can afford them have first option.
Affordable housing it's convoluted in the fact that you're dealing with a lot of systemic issues, right? Systemic racism, systemic gentrification, where there's racial inequalities in gentrification. There's economic justice issues, meaning that when employers come into our city, are people in my neighborhood qualified and having the opportunity to have access to those jobs? And so when you look at affordable housing, you've got to look at, do people have access to opportunity? And I have a campaign that specifically talks about opportunity for all. And I think once we raise the playing field for all people to have access to that, I think that will fix our affordable housing issue. In the meantime, we need to look to other cities that have done how they maintain affordable rent prices, how they create land trusts, how they create zones with rent caps according to the per capita income of that area. We need to be a little bit more outside of the box and innovative in saying, hey, we don't want you to raise rent in this area and displace people, because that's what's happening in affordable housing. We need to create more affordable housing opportunities. with mixed usage, and where there's development, we need to hold developers accountable and saying, did you create affordable housing units in my neighborhood that's affordable? You know, they do that, and you know, affordability is like $1,500 for a 1-bedroom, not according to what the average income is in my district. So you just got to hold people accountable. You got to hold developers accountable and making sure they're being inclusive to people who are low to moderate income. And then you got to fix the overall systemic issues, right? Of access to opportunity, access to the economy, to make a higher living wage, like our firefighters. I tell people our firefighters don't have access to capital to be able to live in affordable housing. That's a problem. And as our next city council person, I'll address those head on in how we allocate those funds and prioritize that in our city budget.
How I have addressed it is that I really make sure that people understand what that word means, right? So affordable housing is just particularly what that person can afford. And a lot of times, like we'll say, even if we can't afford it, just to have somewhere to stay and to feel like they're in a safe neighborhood, well, I'm gonna move to this community and I'm gonna just struggle to find a way to pay $1,350. Right? Whereas in another community, the rent may be $900, but because you don't feel safe in that neighborhood, and that could be very well affordable to you, but you choose not to live in that area, right? Does that make sense? And yes. A lot of times we get affordability confused with low income to moderate housing. So for the community members that I hear, is that we need more low to moderate income housing. But for me, communities can't thrive if everybody is on a lower end of the spectrum. If everybody in that community and the things that we desire to have, we have to have a community that's mixed income, right? So you may be able to live in a situation that your landlord is saying, well, we're going to keep your rent at $500. But when you think about what you're living in for $500, is the house safe? Is it condemnable? Do you have a slumlord? You know, we have to be careful of those things. So we're living in 2021. And I can't think of an area that's gonna, if you're saying that this is a safe area, your landlord is keeping up the property and everything is happening, then you got all the trendy, neat things around you. I can't see a location that's $500. Right. Or that, right, that you would deem safe. Although we wish to have that, but if the prices of everything has went up over the course of years, nothing is still the same. So when my parents, they had their home, it was a reasonable price. And looking at their deed, like I can imagine like the struggles that they went through, because on their deed still today, it says that this area was only for white people only. You know what I mean? But they made this decision to go ahead and push through those barriers and become a homeowner, which was affordable and than paying the actual rent every month. So becoming a homeowner to our community, we have to have that mindset shift, Joy, to understand if I become a homeowner, then I can clearly afford a reduced amount of what I can pay and what's affordable. It's just going through the process, getting your credit and everything together and understanding that, you know, that we can do it. So for me, that's the way that I handle it and address it, is that I want to make sure that people really understand it, because they get it confused. And then for District 9, we want all kind of housing, and we want each community to thrive and be, you know, mixed income levels for everybody.
Affordable housing is very important. Actually, before I just purchased a home in September, but before that, I lived 6 years in at Alta Place Apartments, which is an affordable housing apartment complex. Very nice, very well done. And it's important to have that type of housing where someone like me can save, or somebody with a family can begin to save up to get a house, to get in a position to get their, you know, credit scores together, to be able to have a little savings, something saved up, so they can get ready to get that down payment, get ready to have money to do maintenance and repairs on their homes. That's why affordable housing is important, because it helps you right now, but it also will help down the line in saving and doing the things you need to do to create that generational wealth that you want to see in your family. So affordable housing is important. It's important, especially in our urban core, where we're seeing a lot of development. I know coming into Alton Park, it's the Reserve at Mountain Pass. Kind of looking at that and seeing that's a 240 unit complex coming into the area. Looking at that, trying to see, make sure I know we spoke to the developers way back in June of 2020 and said it was going to be workforce housing. So we always got to be careful of that wording. Workforce housing, affordable housing, what's the difference there? But prayerfully, that'll be one of those spaces where people can move into and begin to build that, start a foundation of building that wealth to move to a different place, move to home buy-in or however they would like to do. So that is very important. Affordable housing is key to creating general wealth, key to creating home ownership for marginalized communities.
One of the key things is what I'm seeing right now is a lot of the new construction is not affordable housing for the masses. It's very much upscale. And so I think we need to take a look at making smaller affordable houses in areas, not just in District 2, but throughout the city. So I think that's one key thing. I also think working with the state and with federal to get grants to help first-time homeowners and to get reduced interest rates would also help.
It goes back to the first question I asked in priorities on budget is that we've got I mean there's some wonderful projects that have happened and we're doing them, but there's one here, there's one there, and there's not, in my opinion, if there is, I haven't seen it, a coordinated plan for doing that. I think C&E's put forth a start or something that's for conversations. I mean, I think they actually call for a affordable housing czar. I think that, it's my understanding that Caleb is getting ready to put out sort of a community land trust, which I think is an excellent idea. We need to bring the parties together to come up with that, and again, the first step is a plan, but we don't need to spend 6 months, 8 months put together a plan. We need to continue with some of the activities that are going on. But again, affordable housing is in every part of my district. It means something different in some of the areas I have, but it's still a concern, of everybody. And as you said, it shows up high in the citizen surveys.
America, we're the most wealthy country in the world, and I think one way we could retrain people, we could invest in our citizens. We should put more time and effort into develop programs and policy that would help them through this crisis. This is a once in a lifetime crisis. We should do all we can to help those to achieve the American dream by having affordable housing. No one want to lose their home. So we should devise methods, policies in which they can keep their house and be able to do other things.
Affordable housing is something that has been of great interest to me for several years. And when I was invited to join the board of Chattanooga Neighborhood Enterprise, I really leapt at the opportunity because they are so committed to looking hard at how we make sure that our neighborhoods are healthy and increasing access to home ownership and stable housing. So first, I do want to point out, you said 40% of Chattanoogans are housing cost burdened. The average cost of a home in Chattanooga now is $247,000. And it's either the average or the median. So I'll let you guys fact check that on where that number is. Let me look real quick if I've got it. Average, I think that's average. That means that you need to be making a little more than $31 an hour to be able to afford the average home in Chattanooga. So I want to point out that affordable housing is something that we all want. The word itself has connotations of government housing projects. I would call that more like assisted housing. But I want a home that I can afford, and you want a home that you can afford. And we each want to be able to live in the neighborhood that we want to live in. So being able to afford a home is a universal desire within Chattanooga. And we all just have different price points where we can plug in. So acknowledging that $247,000 requires significantly more than many workers in Chattanooga are making, what we have to recognize is we need to be doing two main things, I think. First, we need to make sure that we have programs in place that build neighborhood market strength so that people who are in homes now, that their neighborhoods receive equitable distribution of city services so that their neighborhoods don't actually go down in value. So for example, every neighborhood needs to have street lights. Every neighborhood's trash needs to be picked up. We need to make sure that the roads are maintained, et cetera. Alongside that, homeowners need to, will benefit from thoughtful programs from nonprofits and potentially also from the city that help them maintain their homes. So as people age in place, things like roofs or gutters or foundation leaks, things like that, that if not handled well, could negatively impact the value of their home and also their ability to stay in that home. So we don't want affordable housing to be developed in Chattanooga by way of neglecting our current housing stock. The other thing that I think we need to look hard at is increasing production of homes at lower price points by removing some of the barriers that we have to development right now. And that needs to be very thoughtfully approached. So for example, right now in Chattanooga, when a builder begins to put together a housing development, I believe the trigger is 4 homes. If they build 4 homes side by side, that builder is then responsible for putting in sidewalks, for putting in trees, for putting in lights, et cetera. So all that infrastructure falls to the builder, not to the city. And that's a conversation that we need to have thinking about our long-term goals and intent. Because here in North Chattanooga, I recently saw where a builder was required to take a road that had previously been gravel and add curbs, pave the road, add a sidewalk. Well, now the home across the street is getting flooded because there wasn't a catch basin, there wasn't, et cetera, because that builder's just trying to get in and get out at a cost where they can make a profit. And there's nothing wrong with profit, but it makes it very difficult to build a home for less than $200,000 in the private space. Now, with Chattanooga Neighborhood Enterprise, for example, we don't, as a nonprofit, we don't need to make money on homes. We're able to get 0 interest loans in many cases, and so to make even 1% on a home, just covering the cost of that, gives us the ability to finish the loan and then build another house. And so I'm already seeing some really innovative partnerships that are happening with our nonprofit and our for-profit sectors to create housing stock that is by design more affordable, but also in neighborhoods that will then have a variety of housing types. And I do think that that's a very positive thing for healthy neighborhoods, to have a combination of maybe a few apartments, maybe a few townhouses, some single family homes, some condos, like all different kinds of things, so that people of all different income levels are able to access that area and live together.
I see now in my area, there are a lot of houses being built, new houses. And I don't know the affordability, because I do know that they're expensive houses. And a lot of our residents, or even the offspring of our residents, if they want to stay in the neighborhood, they can't afford those houses. Part of it is the contracting. We need to contract laborers from within our own community, as opposed to going out of state, getting contractors to build these homes. Also, when we look at public housing, we need to make sure that the public housing areas are looked at with dignity, because a lot of times they look at low-income housing as projects, of which I've lived at some point in my life. and they look down on it as a lack of dignity and a lack of integrity, when there can be training available for those residents as well. The cost of the housing, I think, like I said, with the contracting, I think the owners of the properties can be empathetic with the renters, and make sure that they are taking care of the houses as well, taking care of the places, because there are a lot of renters that are not taking care of that property, and I know that's a little red flag right there, but to whom much is given, much is required. So if you're going to make sure that your property is up to par and that it's livable.
In this district, we have not seen a lot of economic growth, and that includes businesses, housing developments, anything that could bring economic growth to this district. And so one thing about it is we need more affordable housing in this district. And we need something that is affordable to every age group and not just catered to one particular age group. Because when you understand there are senior citizens that have a fixed income, there are single parents that have a fixed income. So what are we looking to do in order to help these families make ends meet? If they're paying over 30% of their funds to just housing alone, how are they affording clothes? How are they affording food? So we need to really go to the drawing board and see what we can do. Does that mean we need to find a private investor in order to bring housing? Or should we be willing to raise taxes on a certain tax bracket in order to afford affordable housing in this district? It's all about going to the drawing board and figuring out what would best benefit this district.
First of all, we need to build it. And we need to create pathways, and we need to do everything in our power through the tools that we have. We just heard of a pilot from CNE on Tuesday that's going to free up or provide 46, I think, new units. And part of that is very critical in the number of affordable housing units. So let's go back to how we get there. Well, we need to be, it needs to be made a priority for the city administration, who will drive that discussion as far as coming to us with a plan for us to approve. I think council, every member on council, from what I have heard, again, I can only speak for myself, is extremely interested in more affordable housing. But how we get there, and if we have continuous roadblocks in the process to build, and I think that we are not doing ourselves justice to ourselves, our future, or the people that need housing. And I think we have a tremendous shortage, Sarah Grace, and I understand and I realize we need to fix it. And if we need more tools in the toolbox, and that's part of what we're doing with the zoning assessment. I mean, development starts with zoning. If we have more tools to be able to encourage that, then I think we're going in the right direction. But we have a lot of work to do, and I'm ready to get down to it.
My business is actually located over in East Chattanooga, but my home is in District 2, which is in North Chattanooga. So I certainly have exposure to a variety of areas of town on a regular basis. There is no question that we need more affordable housing in the city of Chattanooga. And my approach to that would be trying to create what I'm going to sort of generally describe as a public-private partnership. And essentially what that would look like is trying to create incentives for private businesses to come into communities that need more affordable housing, and through tax incentives or other sorts of programs that we can create. And there was a great article in the paper within the last week talking about an out-of-town entity who is developing some affordable housing over in St. Elmo, which I think is emblematic of exactly the sort of thing that we need to be doing to bring quality housing to the Chattanooga market that is affordable for many of the working folks that can't afford, a $2,000 a month apartment or even a $1,500 a month apartment. So I think a combination of public-private partnerships with the right structure of incentives is certainly a way that we can make some meaningful progress in that arena.
I would say this, it's clearly an issue that needs to be addressed. How do we address it in the best way? In District 4, I mean, I would say we're robust with housing development, right? And it's probably higher grade housing for the most part. And so you don't want to be blind to what's going on in significant parts of our city. I think the city can be a driver in bringing parties together that can look at ways to address that. And if you go in our community, there are a lot of people that have some good ideas or differing ideas about how to do that. We've got to find a way to bring those ideas together, those parties together, sort through what, what's a new idea, what's something that may work, right? That we haven't tried. It's something that, is only going to, in my opinion, unless we do that and do that with proactive purpose, it's a situation that I don't think is going to get better actually in Chattanooga. So I would hope that the city, again, could be a driver in bringing folks together to dialogue and really kind of whiteboard and come up with those ideas that might be new and groundbreaking to deal with that.
One of the things that we have got to rein in Chattanooga are non-owner occupied Airbnbs. Nashville came to an intelligent conclusion that they could not continue to afford to allow outside interest into community neighborhoods and understood the impact that has to a housing shortage. I support Airbnbs as long as we have the owner of that home living actually there and paying taxes here in the city of Chattanooga. And secondly, we need to put a cap on the amount of Airbnbs that we have in the community to make sure that they're not being overrun in a particular neighborhood. One of the other things is I've had a wonderful opportunity extended to me as a community activist was to work with Collier Construction right off of Main Street for their Catoosa Thatcher Mill project, where Mr. Collier has decided to slate a portion of the project to affordable housing and extend that through C&E to community members who rent. So that is laying a blueprint for development in the future of encouraging developers to partner with the city of Chattanooga without a tax break, to include a portion of a development to the very people who live in the community that have the potential to be displaced. The other thing is that one of the things I learned going to city council is that we have a very outdated zoning structure. We do not have enough diversified housing. So the majority of our housing are R1, which is a single family dwelling. We need to diversify the type of zoning structures that we have to allow all types of housing, whether that is tiny homes, whether that is accessory dwelling units or granny flats, quadplexes, triplexes. We need to expand the type of housing because everyone's needs are different. And finally, I would have to say is Chattanooga, especially in East Chattanooga, we have a tremendous amount of abandoned buildings that I've seen the city of Chattanooga purchase buildings as surplus. Why not purchase some of those buildings and partner with developers to turn that into micro housing for our homeless, to get them off of the street, and even create housing opportunities for returning citizens who are coming back home from prison, or even college students who need to get into affordable housing so they can get their first and fresh start into being tax-paying citizens as well. So those are the various ideas I have of how we can tackle a large and complex problem like affordable housing.
I think it's very critical that the people in the community understand how that works. It's market driven. So when you go and you try to get, say, a 2-bedroom apartment, 1 bath or 2 baths, the market drives what that's going to be across the board at a minimum. And then some people may be charged extra depending on the area and all those great things. So I think we have to do a better job of working with the Realtors Association, those types, to better understand the marketing. But here again, what we were just talking about, a more quality pay will help offset it. If if 30 or 40% is going to household, it lets me know that there's not enough money is coming into the house to take care of other stuff. So the increase in pay should help offset that and should put you in a better position to have a better housing arrangement. I would much rather see more home ownership than rental, because home ownership is an investment. So as you know, if you can go pay $1,000 for an apartment, then you should try to position yourself and do whatever it takes to fix yourself up to be able to get a home and spend that same $1,000 a month on home ownership. So you can actually see the value of your money, because you got a home, but it's an investment, which, you know, you build in equity and all those great things. So you actually get more of a direct benefit than if you're rent from somebody else and somebody else is getting the benefit off of your month to month.
Affordable housing as a request, it's a concern of my constituents. It's not as much of a request within my district. There are a few that are supported out here. I've supported them. I've supported federal aid, which has to flow through the city in order to fix up some of those facilities to be used for that purposes. I've supported those. I've pushed them through, and they've been successful. But citywide, there are some districts that need it and are asking for it, I should say, even more than others in some areas of our city. And I've worked with those the representatives of those districts to ensure that those projects were successful and that they did take place. I believe District 8 has 15 different projects that are for affordable housing, and the majority of those we put in. So it is something that is being done. It is being worked on, and I will continue to do that. I will continue to support my colleagues and my constituents as those projects come up, where it is that we can interject ourselves into the conversations to ensure that any additional funds, again, being a pass-through for federal dollars and things like that, I am ready to be there and help, because it is a dire situation for many of our residents. And just touching on that a little bit, Kelly, you know, I was the one that put through the senior tax freeze specifically for this reason. We hear affordable and we think just families. There are senior citizens, fixed incomes, that are also seeing the effect of, honestly, our success in Chattanooga, in a growing city. And naturally, home prices go up, and we have a lot of seniors that get priced out on fixed income. So that was one of my champion cases. I got it pushed through. I got it approved. It's part of what we do in the city now, specifically to protect people from this type of thing happening and allow them to stay in their homes. So that's part of what I've already done to address it, and I will continue to support those initiatives going forward.
That again goes back to the individual. So you don't want to buy a house that's more than you can afford. You also don't want to buy a house that's in an area that you might not feel safe. So we have to work on building those two things together to work on having safer communities and work on having properties that we can purchase at a smaller amount of money. And we have so many restrictions on zoning, and that plays a part in how the housing crisis is continually going up.